If you're so scared that somebody is going to leave you because you're showing up authentically, I'd love to ask you what you're losing. And I'd love to know where you learned that behavior from. Who taught you that you can't be yourself? Because if you're yourself, you'll lose somebody. And that's okay. There is no shame.
Welcome to Season of Stuck, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the all too human experience of feeling stuck. I'm your host, Deanna DeBera, and on this podcast, we explore all things stuck. How and why stuckness happens, what it feels like, how to learn and grow from it, and ultimately, how to get unstuck and move forward in an authentic, empowered way. If you are looking for insights, support, and community as you make your journey from stuck to unstuck, you're in the right place. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Season of Stuck. And not just any episode, but the first episode of 2025. I hope your new year is off to a great start. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Deanna. I am your host, and I am a person that has felt stuck a lot. I have felt stuck in so many ways and in so many places, which at the time felt really, really hard. But as a result of all that stuckness, I've also had to figure out how to get unstuck many times. And it's that journey, the journey from stuck to unstuck, that ultimately inspired this podcast. So if you're feeling stuck, you're in the right place. And our goal is to support you as you make that journey from stuck to unstuck, and to help you feel a little less alone along the way. And if you are not new here, welcome back. Thank you for coming with us into 2025. We are so grateful that you're here and that you continue to be here. Seriously, thank you for listening. So today, we are kicking off this new year of podcasting by diving into an area where so many of us get stuck, and that is relationships. Let's be real. Relationships can be hard. They can also be great and amazing and fulfilling and wonderful, but even the best relationships can sometimes feel like a challenge. Whether we're newly dating, just got into a relationship, or have been with our partner for years, relationships have an incredible ability to trigger our deepest insecurities, our oldest wounds, and our most ingrained patterns. Not to mention the insecurities, wounds, and patterns of our partners. And when we're caught in those patterns, whether that's anxiously waiting for someone to text us back, or being inauthentic in our communication, or not regulating our emotions, or trying to change someone who isn't ready or doesn't want to change, it is very easy to find ourselves feeling completely stuck. I speak from experience. My dating history reads like a stuck textbook. If there is a relationship mistake to make, chances are I've made it. I have dated people that treated me poorly because I didn't think I deserved to be treated well. I have allowed my anxiety to take center stage and have driven people away as a result. I have deprioritized my own wants and needs to suit my partners, which ultimately led to major resentment. I have failed to show up for my partner because I wasn't showing up for myself. Seriously, I mean it when I say textbook stuck. And even in my marriage, which is by far the best relationship I've ever been in, it can be hard to stay on the same page sometimes, and we can drift away from each other and feel stuck as a result. So yeah, relationships can be hard and they can be stuck making. But that's why I am so excited about today's guest. Sabrina Zohar is a dynamic entrepreneur and dating coach renowned for her transformative podcast, The Sabrina Zohar Show. Sabrina offers a clear, no-nonsense approach to relationship advice, and each episode features practical tips backed by board-certified and licensed psychologists, all of which are aimed at helping listeners improve their dating lives by fostering self-worth and personal growth. During our conversation, Sabrina shares powerful insights about getting unstuck in our relationships, like why trying to change others can keep us stuck in unhealthy patterns, how to recognize when our nervous system is hijacking our relationships, and what to do about it, and actionable tools for regulating ourselves when we're triggered, which can better equip us for moving through any dating or relationship stuckness. We also explore why being authentic, even when it feels scary, is essential for creating real connection, and how to actually show up more authentically, both for ourselves and for the people we're in relationship with. I loved chatting with Sabrina, and what really struck me is how she makes healing feel so accessible. I walked away from this conversation with so many insights on how to get unstuck in my own relationship. And my hope is that you walk away with the same. Let's jump into my conversation with Sabrina. Sabrina, welcome to Season of Stuck. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored.
I am so honored. I absolutely love your podcast. I am married. I've been in a relationship with my husband for a decade, but I still consider us to be dating. And when I lose track of that is where we get stuck. And you give so much helpful insight and perspective into what it means to be in relationship and how to show up in relationships, not only like for your partner, but for yourself, that I find infinitely helpful. So I am so excited to dive into this with you.
Yay. Thank you. I know it's so funny because anytime people are like, oh, I just discovered you. And I'm like, well, buckle up. Because personally, I was tired of it. I was in the dating world. I'm now in a relationship and a very, very healthy and secure one. But for years, I was super anxious. I would freak out if I didn't get a text. I would use my body to connect with men. I mean, like narcissistic father. It's like, hello, I was textbook. And I was so tired of listening to like, send this text. And I'm like, what? But the guy sent me a dick pic back. Like he didn't ask me on the date. And it was just very frustrating to hear the same stuff. So it's exciting to be able to cut through the noise. And it's like, sure, some people hate me, some people love me. That's cool. But my goal is to change perspectives and create a new echo chamber because I'm really tired of, here are 10 things to get a guy obsessed with you. And it's like, what is this manipulative tactic that we've learned to use instead of just connecting with people authentically?
And I think anytime you take the approach of honesty and authenticity over the clickbaity, easy, somewhat manipulative approach, there's going to be people that love you and there's going to be people that hate you, but there's also going to be people that really deeply connect with you. And I know that that's how a lot of your audience, including myself, feel. So thank you for that. Also, can I just say, I wish that I had you around when I was dating. My dating life in my 20s, that could be a whole separate podcast in and of itself. And how I wish there were people having the conversations that you're having back when I was trying to navigate the dating landscape in like 2011, 2012, 2013.
Oh, and what I think of even same, I'm like, when I moved to New York and I was a hot mess at 18, I just turned 19, I was a baby. And when I was there, I was just the poster child for unhealthy and toxic. And I think that's really what led me to wanting to start this career was I was tired of the white noise. I was tired of hearing it because it's like, I just got a photo today of one of my clients got engaged. And the goal for me is not that. It's great. It's a nice to have, right? If somebody gets engaged, gets married, finds a relationship. For me, though, where I think all of this really stemmed from was like, come home to yourself. And when you come home to yourself, then you have the opportunity to allow someone amazing in. Because I'll tell you this, had I not done this work on myself, had I not shown up differently, had I not actually invested in myself, not just monetarily, but also that, I would never have been okay with my partner. I would have had the ick. It would have been, he didn't text me every day. Oh, I don't like his car color, something stupid, right? But I would have completely overlooked the most incredible, beautiful relationship I've ever had simply because of the nonsense that we were hearing on the internet. So I am excited to hopefully help anybody that's listening wherever they're at.
I love that you said that. And it reminds me of that closing line of the Sex and the City series when she's like, the most exciting, challenging, and significant relationship of all is the one that you have with yourself. And it's in getting that relationship right that you are able to be present in a healthy, stable, reciprocal relationship.
You know what's so funny too about Sex and the City? I don't know if you ever knew, but you know how it ended, obviously. Big. Well, for anybody who hasn't watched, sorry, you missed it.
Yeah.
Big,
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Big goes and gets her. And the irony is, I watched an interview with the director, the writer of Sex and the City, and he said, that wasn't my ending. And everyone's like, it wasn't? And he was like, the network made me change the ending to be that. And he was like, that was completely contrary to his character. He would never have done that. And he was like, you want to know how I wrote it? He never comes and gets her and she's in Paris alone. And he was like, that's how I intended it to be. But he was like, I wasn't allowed to. And the reason I thought that that was really important for us to even just hit on is because we see how difficult it is for people to change. We see how hard it is when you're feeling stuck, when you're feeling anything, how difficult it is for us to change a simple part of our routine every day, let alone this false, oh, this person's just going to change everything and come and get you and swoop. And that was the stuff that really impacted me, was watching these things and seeing this type of content, whether it be Sex and the City or something else, that it was going to be this person that saves the day and comes and gets me. And the end of the day, I was like, that was me. That had to be me, because if I don't go and do that, I'm waiting for somebody else to, and I could be there for a long time.
Well, and you're hitting on a point, I think, especially, so I just turned 40. So I kind of came up in like the 2000s, 2010s. And there was this depiction in media of these unattainable, unavailable, generally men, generally like heterosexual relationships. And the plot line and the story arc was the woman chasing after them and doing everything that they could to change this obviously unavailable and uninterested man. And then in the end, they change and happily ever after. And I think that set up an entire generation of people to push through what are very clearly challenging and somewhat unhealthy relationship dynamics, thinking that they're going to get to that jewel at the end. Oh, I'm going to change this person. They're not going to have an avoidant attachment style anymore because I'm going to be able to crack through that. And through these really kind of like grand, unrealistic gestures, not through the real work of working on ourselves and being able to look at the challenges that we bring to the relationship and talk about things openly and foster more open and honest communication. I feel like we need to see that better depict in media.
100%. It drives me up a fucking wall, especially with like, one, I used to think personally that I could change somebody, like Crybaby. Am I going to age myself like the Johnny Depp movie? Oh my God, I was obsessed with that movie. And that's what I thought was, oh, I'm going to turn the bad boy into like the house man. Like, I'm going to get the guy that's the playboy. And when he chooses me, I can change him. That's not how that works. How it actually works is like when I met my partner, he has his avoidance and I have my anxiety, right? We're humans. And really all it meant was that I got to create a safe space for him to explore those aspects of himself. And then in turn, our relationship benefited. And now he is the best version of himself, not because I changed him, but because I created a space for him to evolve and grow. And for me, I was stuck on that for a long time. And like, I see it every day. Like, I do videos on avoidance and I get this like volatility of like, you're being too nice to them and you don't get, and they're assholes. And it's like, what I hear from that is black and white thinking. And what I hear from that is this villainization of people that are not like how we are and this discomfort. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people that do a lot of bullshit behavior, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. That could just be an asshole. And that could just be somebody that is a bad apple. But on the aggregate, when we look at attachment styles, when we look at this avoidant and the anxious, it's like the one key thing that we're missing here is that you need to be triggered for this attachment style to actually play out. And so if somebody's just, well, I asked for a hug and they called me clingy. It's like, again, that's just an asshole. That's not somebody that's avoidant. That's somebody who is putting space because their emotional bandwidth is more limited. And so I think it's just so important that we really create clear understandings that the road to health and recovery and growth and all of those things, like my partner and I, he is a therapist, and I joined a session a few months ago because I was getting frustrated and I was starting to tell my partner, I'm like, I don't get it. Like, what is happening? We keep regressing. We keep going back into the same space. So he said, listen, could you join a session and explain to my therapist what's going on? Sure, I have no problem with it. And what the therapist say at the end? And he goes, listen, Sabrina, I hear your frustration and I get it, but I need you to just know one thing. It's going to take a long time for this to change. And he was like, this doesn't happen overnight. We have a lot of work to do. And he is 1,000% committed. But I think we've been sold a false bill of goods that like, oh, all you have to do is just do this and they'll change. And it's like, again, for you to change your routine of when you drink your coffee is taking a lot of work. Do you think that someone is suddenly going to have the bandwidth, the emotional availability, and just get go of all of these triggers that created these walls in a month because they met you? It's a bit arrogant.
Well, and the way that I look at it, again, I've been with my partner for a decade, and there are so many challenges that we still face, so many cyclical arguments, places that we find ourselves over and over again. And I'm not going to lie, there have been times where I have been triggered and have wanted to bail.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just been like, I don't want to do this anymore. But the way that I gauge it is as long as we both are bringing the willingness to look at, okay, what's actually happening here? Let's deconstruct this. What can we do differently next time? Even if the change doesn't happen overnight, as long as we're both continuing to show up and be willing to do that work and examine what's happening with ourselves and with our relationship, then for me, it's worth it to keep moving forward.
Couldn't agree more. To me, I remember Julie Menino, she's a marriage family therapist. I love her. She talks about secure attachment very often. And the one thing she said that stuck with me, she was like, how do you know when to leave? She was like, when both people are no longer willing and invested in making this work. And of course, there is a line of toxicity, right? Like how many times we hear of like, okay, I'll change. And you're like, but you're not. But for me, I love my partner. He is a different person than he was a year ago, but not by a lot, right? By small, minute moments. And I think it's so human what you said of there are times I get triggered and I just want to bolt and be done with it. But at the end of the day, when we have two people that are willing and able and open and receptive to working on a relationship, that is truly all you can ask for. Progress, not perfection, because that perfection doesn't exist.
And I think too, another place where people get stuck, and I will absolutely speak for myself, is when we're dating or when we're in a relationship and there are challenges that come with that experience and that person, we can get stuck with the grass is greener. Oh, if I was in a different relationship, then X, Y, and Z would be better. But the fact of the matter is, no one is perfect, including ourselves. Like when I'm getting caught up in all of the things that are wrong with my partner and wrong with my relationship, it is like a very clear trigger that like, okay, actually, maybe it's time to like take a bit of a mirror and like look at what I'm bringing to the table. Not to say that there like aren't things about relationships or partners that like aren't quite the right fit, but I think that we can often get stuck in looking at all of the things that are wrong with our partner, and that doesn't always feel like the best way to move forward.
100%. And I think we see that often when we're talking the attachment style, specifically like the anxious avoidant, right? People with a lot of anxiety. And also, this isn't me throwing shade. I was her. So like, everybody can get off their fucking high horse of like, you're being shameful.
Same.
It's like, no, I'm not. I'm being honest about where I came from and where we're going. But more often than not, we see this all the time of the anxious person being like, you need to change and you're doing all of these things wrong. And then what happens? The avoidant person's like, I'm a failure. I'm rejected for who I am. Retreat back. This isn't safe. And I've noticed that I will have times where I'll get frustrated with my partner and I'll look and I'm stopping and I'll stop myself and say, wait a minute, Zohar, how are you showing up? And I'm like, oh, you're on your loop. You're on your loop of your obsessive, like I'll say the same thing because of my anxiety. And I'll even stop and go, okay, he's actually allowed to dismiss this, or he'll look and just like, okay, and I can see that. And instead of going, listen to me and why aren't you creating a safe space? I have to look and say, no, you need to go regulate. You got to go for a walk, come back. And that way you can have a different conversation with this person and not harp on the same thing versus, right, when I'm being vulnerable with him. Like the other day, I was being very open and he started to play with the dog. And I looked at him and I said, hey, this feels very dismissive. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I'm listening. The dog. And I said, it's okay, but tell me that, right? You just walked away. I was like, let me know that. So I think there's two different experiences when we're looking and saying, is this me, right? Is this something I'm bringing to the table? Like, am I, yikes, I maybe have said the same thing 4 times and I think this person's done hearing it. Or, hey, that felt really shitty. Moving forward, could you not do that? Thank you so much.
There is something that is so like comforting and almost empowering in hearing that the things that we go through are not just us. And that's why I think it's really important to have these conversations, because again, I'll speak for myself. When I am in this dynamic, like when I am doing my thing and my partner's doing his thing and we're doing the same thing that we do together, it can feel very personal. Oh, this is some sort of like shortcoming or failing on our end. But having these conversations and really examining the larger scale of these dynamics in bringing two people together, two people who are different and have different ways of communicating and different ways of processing and different traumas and challenges that they bring to the relationship. When I hear dynamics that feel similar to mine, it's like a release of like, okay, this is not a me thing. This is just a relational thing. And if it's a broader relational thing, that means that there are solutions and ways to work on it.
That's actually why I started my career, was because I felt so alone. I felt, you go to your friends and you're telling them, especially because I would have some of my friends were a bit like, with me having such high anxiety, like the person you see today is not the person that I was. And some of my friends were more avoidant, right? I'd go for those more avoidant leaning people that would kind of balance that out, or super secure. And I always thought like, oh, I'm the only person that's psychotic. Oh, okay, so I'm crazy. That's it. Like no one else feels this. And then when you start to realize there is a huge, big world out there, that there's a lot of people struggling, even to the point where like I don't ever really talk about friendships as often because I had a lot of shame around the fact that I don't have a best friend from high school. I don't have someone I've known for 20 years that we're inseparable. And it was even comforting to talk to my now really good friend and hear her experience. And she's like, hey, I think the same. And it's like, oh, you do? oh, okay, can I have a hug? We're not alone. And I think to anybody listening, everybody has issues. All of us are going through something. There's no fucking end game to this, but can you find comfort in your own body and safety? Oh, could we start there?
Mm. The power of the sharing is so real. And we had similar inspirations. The reason that I started this podcast is because I am a person that has felt stuck a lot. Like if there is a place and a way to be stuck, chances are I have experienced it over the last 20 years of my life. And for years, there was shame in that where I viewed that experience as a personal failing. Like there is something wrong with me that I keep coming up against these stuck points in all these different areas of my life. And I carried that shame with me, and that shame kept me in silence. And it wasn't until I started having conversations and when every single person that I talked to mirrored that story back to me. When I said I felt stuck in my career, I felt stuck in my personal growth journey, my relationship, my addiction, everyone was like, oh yeah, I've been there. Here's my story. And that made me feel so much less alone. And similar to you, that's why I was like, oh, I want to talk about this. I want other people who are feeling alone to not have that experience and to know that there are other people out there that are experiencing the same thing.
100%. I remember, I'll never forget when I said, like, I married my father, and people were like, literally? I'm like, yeah, fucking literally. And I was like, no, but I married a man that was exactly like my father. And I'll never forget, we were together 2 years, but a year was like, we broke up, got back together. And he was pretty classic, like covert narcissist. Like he was just, got to the point where like you could see it, where he was dividing me from my friends and family. He would gaslight me all the time of like, well, one of us loves you more than the other. And I was like, oh, don't pull this shit. You know what I mean? Like, don't start this. He would have his mother call me and yell at me, and then he would call my mom. And it was like a whole thing. It was so toxic. It's wild. But I was so in my shit. I can't blame him. I had so much stuff. I had so many insecurities. I would scream and cry and protest behavior. Like, oh, it was a perfect storm. And I'll never forget when he broke up with me and he left. We were supposed to go to Spain to see his family together, and he was punishing me. That was his way of punishing me, was you're not invited anymore. And I was like, okay, cool. And I'll say it, I was suicidal. I was very dark. I was like, this is the end of it for me. And my mom came to town and she said, you need to go to therapy. This is it. Like, it's done, Sabrina. We need you to see help. And his mother told my mom, your daughter needs help. And my mom goes, don't worry, you'll regret the day you said that. And she wasn't wrong. And it started, I didn't know where to go to therapy. And so I joined a Narcissist Anonymous group. And I was like, I don't know where to go. And who knew on 7th Ave and fucking 21st Street that there is this random building that had 20 people in a room that were all moving on from narcissism. And because I was new, it was, hey, Sabrina, can you share? And I was like, yeah, of course. And I share and I share. And I remember looking around, and when I was done with the story, and I was like, but this is normal. And I remember just a woman looked at me and she goes, oh, honey, that's not okay. And I just started to cry. I remember just breaking down, and I was like, what do you mean? I said, well, then why are you here? I said, what's going on? And she said, well, I was you. And she was like, I was you. I came in and I was a shell of a human. And then I met my now husband, and I come back here to remind you of where you can be. To this day, I will thank her. I get chills thinking about her, like whoever she was, you were an angel, because she taught me that in group settings I could heal. And I never went back. I didn't go to another meeting. It's all I needed was to hear, oh my God, this isn't okay. And there's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to accept this. And now I get to be that person on the other side of it to say, it's okay. I've been there before. You deserve better than this.
Yeah. And that's a privilege, right? To carry that torch, to be able to help people in the way that you were helped, and to change people's lives in the way that your lives was changed. Like that, I get chills just like hearing that story. Like that's incredible.
To me, I love nothing more than sharing. I didn't go to school. Like, I didn't get a degree in psychology. I'm not a neuroscientist. I am not any of those things. But what I do know is that I was the epitome of these issues that all of these people talk about. And I was the girl that dug myself out of a hole to then come out and say, healing is not linear. Healing will never end. You're no such thing as being fully healed. But let's get rid of those stigmas and create a safe space for, at the very least, maybe we can make some progress and not perfection.
And for some people, it's not the psychologist or therapist or the neuroscientist that's going to help them. So the most stuck that I have ever been was I had a very serious alcohol use disorder when I was younger, like 19 to 25. Most stuck I've ever been, hopeless, lost, super dark, just bad place. And when I stopped drinking, sure, I went to therapy, I did all of those things, but That's not what pulled me out of that hard time. It was other people who had been there and who were able to say, I know that it's really scary right now. I know it feels like things are never going to get better, but I promise you that they will because they did for me. And that is what got me through that now 15 years since I have had a drink. And so sometimes it's just in that sharing your personal story and your personal experience that has the most impact.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And what we also forget is I think we're so used to saying, oh, addiction's just like drugs and alcohol, right? Or sex or things like that. It's like, oh, so are relationships. So is dopamine. So is cortisol. So are withdrawals. So are breakups. So is limerence. When it comes to dating and relationships, and that's why we have our mutual friend, Britt Frank, right? I love Britt Frank, and she's one of the most brilliant,
Love her.
brilliant neuropsychotherapists that I've ever met. And she was the one who really opened my eyes to like, hey, do you know what's happening in your brain right now? Do you understand that this is every time, right? For me, what was the hill I would die on? If he doesn't text me every day, drop him. Get rid of him. So you don't need this guy. Who the fuck are you to not text me every day? Make me feel seen and heard. I didn't know who these people were, right? I had one date with this person, if I even had that. And Britt brought it to my attention. She's like, every time you wait for that text message, what's happening? Dopamine release. And you become addicted. And then what happens when you don't have that? You're going through a withdrawal. Your brain is going through the same thing. You're just not putting fake chemicals in there. You're just using what our brain cocktail is. And when I started to understand, oh, this is an addiction just like anything else. Okay, so then similar principles apply to how to kick that. Like I don't drink alcohol either because it's just not my thing. I don't enjoy it. But I do understand the weight and what it can do and how it can impact you. And I think if we use those same principles and understand that even healthy things could be addiction, working out can become an addiction, then I think we understand that we actually have a lot more control and power over our lives. Because a true testament, 15 years and you haven't picked up a drink, that's not because, oh, somebody else told me. It's like that's your will every day to show up for yourself. And we forget that we can also implement that in our dating life.
And can we just take a moment to appreciate the incredible Britt Frank? I am not exaggerating when I say I internally, externally on this podcast reference Britt Frank multiple times a week. The science of stuck completely changed the way that I think about stuckness. And my interview with her, it was just like light bulbs every 30 seconds where I was like scribbling notes afterwards because I was like, I need to remember all of these things and implement them. She's just absolutely incredible.
I'm obsessed with her. We did a course together, a breakup course, and like it's one of my favorites. I talk to her almost every day. And she's the reason that she stopped helping me. I was like, I kept saying, I have a client and she keeps asking why questions. And she helped me. She's like, reframe why to I don't like. And I was like, huh? And just all these little things. But here's the thing. Her story is a true testament of you can eat shit and come out the other side and have a crazy, colorful past and still make something of yourself. It doesn't have to mean that you do that when you're 20. I didn't know my ass from my elbow when I was 20, but now in my 30s, I know a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. And I just have to say, those are my favorite kinds of people. The ones that like really have that colorful or they overcame something really challenging or went through a really hard time to come out on the other end and then take that and use it to make the world a better place. Those are my favorite kind of people.
To me, it's that passion and a purpose. And don't get me wrong, I get attacked every day on the internet like, you're not a licensed therapist. And it's like, you're right, I'm not. But you know what I do have? A shit ton of experience and a boatload of empathy for whenever you need it. And it's not going to be buttoned up in some fake bullshit psychobabble thing. But I think what it really just shows is like, I find more inspiration from somebody who came from nothing and became a millionaire. I want to know every aspect they went through versus somebody who's just going to tell me how to do it. But where's your experience with it? Right? It's like, I see that all the time with like Instagram growth people. I always find those comical of the like, here's what you need to do to grow. And you're like, you have 200 followers, but who are you to tell me versus someone with 1 million being like, hey, here's the strategy I put in. I'll be like, my number one question for anybody is not what worked. I'm like, what didn't work? And what did you learn from that? I want to know what fuck ups you had along the way because I only remember the men that ghosted me, the men that hurt me, the men that really impacted me. I don't necessarily remember, oh yeah, that guy was really good to me.
It's the ones that stick out in your brain.
And to me, I think especially when it comes to dating and relationships, I see this all the time of like, I wish this never happened. I wish I never met this person. They ruined me. And what I hear from that is you're giving your power away. What you're saying is, I don't have any choice. Life happened to me. And it's like, no. Life is happening for you. And when you can stop and just, even my favorite thing I ever learned in therapy, learn to take radical accountability. 100% of everything. Like even for me, when something happens, I had my name changed, right? My podcast, I had to change the fucking name of it. Of course, I was angry and I was pissed. But what did I say? Sabrina, this is on you. You did not trademark it. You didn't believe in yourself. You didn't think this would ever happen. You never thought you'd become successful. I started this in the kitchen of my apartment that I could barely afford, just going, let me see if this works. But by taking that accountability I was able to move through it instead of like, he's so mean and what an asshole. And it's like, cool. Could those also be true? Yes. But what is also true is that if I take accountability and ownership of what I've done, right? Same with my ex. Sure, he was a narcissist. He was all those things. And what was my part in it? It literally will change your life because it's not about shame and blame, but it's about saying, what do I actually have control in versus what did I think I had control in by trying to manipulate the situation?
And it's similar to the train of thought in like, there are certain things that aren't necessarily your fault, things that happen that are not your fault, but they are your responsibility to deal with once they happen. And taking that stance gives you the power and control back because you're not lost in what happened to you. You are then actively interacting with it in a way that allows you to move forward.
100%. Like there's no space for victim blame because this isn't about that. There's no place for abuse in the world. So that like goes without saying. But when it comes to, because I hear this every day of like, this person ruined me, or one person said the other day in a live, the guy I'm dating keeps putting himself on the pedestal. I don't know what to do. And I even said to her, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, I'm sorry, talk about not taking ownership. I said, excuse me, pray tell, how did he put himself on a fucking pedestal for you that you're obsessed with him? Right? And it's like, what, did he spray pheromones and like drug you? Anything short of like forcing you? There is no way that anybody, and it's the same as like, you made me feel. It's like, I didn't make you feel anything. You took what I said and internalized it. Right? I said a statement the other day on a podcast. I said, for the anxious folk, don't take things so personally. Avoidance, it's not about you. And someone said, you're shaming of anxious people and that's disrespectful. And I said, what's shame about it? You are I didn't make you feel shameful. You took what I said, internalized it, took it personal, and attacked yourself. And that's okay. But take fucking ownership of it. That's how your life will change. By blaming me, some stranger on the internet you have never had a conversation with, is not going to get you the relationship you want versus saying, hey, you're right. The avoidant person treated me like shit because I allowed it.
Amen to that. You love podcasts, and so do I. I am always on the hunt for new podcasts, and I've got some good news for you. I have found a podcast that you are going to love. It's called Blue Sky, and it's hosted by Bill Burke. Each week, Bill chats with inspiring people who are tackling the world's toughest challenges with a fresh dose of hope and optimism. Created by the Optimism Institute, Blue Sky is here to balance out all of the doom and gloom we see in the media by offering a positive, forward-thinking view of the future. From climate change to AI, homelessness to immigration, Bill and his guests cover it all, bringing in diverse perspectives that leave you feeling inspired and uplifted. Every episode reminds you that no matter how cloudy things seem, there's always a blue sky above. It's all about shifting your perspective and finding hope in even the hardest conversations. So, if you're ready for a podcast that leaves you feeling good about where we're headed, check out Blue Sky on any major podcast platform. It's the perfect way to clear the clouds and embrace a brighter future. And really, what's better than that? So we've talked about some of the places where people get stuck in dating. And I know that in certain ways, relationships are timeless, right? A lot of the dynamics that we talk about have existed between partners for as long as we've been humaning. But we're also existing in a very interesting and different time where there are certain challenges and expectations and things happening that impact how we relate to one another, like social media, like online dating and the illusion of kind of endless options that it creates. So in your work, in working with clients and your research and doing your podcast, where do you feel are some of the places where people most get stuck in the dating world of today?
It's a great question. I think the biggest thing I see, what comes to mind immediately, is twofold. we have this fetishization of like, I want to meet someone in person. It was easier back then. And it's like, first of all, I don't know who sold you this false bill of goods, but we have to remember with technology, with great power comes great decisions. So the pendulum can swing. So sure, maybe back in the day, you married the person in your town and it's like, and that person was an alcoholic. They were abusive. They treated you like shit, right? You didn't have a choice. You were just like, they're there. I'm 22. I have to get married. Now we have choices. We get to make decisions. And what I think people forget is that our cell phones and all this technology are little dysregulating machines. Like my day changed this morning. I didn't pick up my phone for 20 minutes when I woke up. I did a meditation. That was the only reason. I didn't go on social media. It changed the way I felt. I could feel my cortisol spike when I opened up my email. And I just thought, I was like, this is bullshit. What am I doing? But it's ingrained. And I think where people get stuck is when dysregulation happens, especially with technology. I hear this every day. People have their phones 24/7. And it's like, that doesn't mean you're accessible to me. That doesn't mean you get access to me because I have this, right? That's entitlement. It's the same with the internet. You think because I have a social media, because you can DM me that I owe you a response? In what world, right? You would never have this type of accessibility to people. And I think where people get stuck is black and white, right? If it's not this, then it's bad. If you don't text me every day, you're not into me. And it's like, what I hear is you're dysregulated. What I hear is that you're coming from a place of, I'm a little kid who doesn't get to choose who their parents are, and I have to take this. So let me change them and I'll make myself feel better. Because if I'm good, they're bad. But if I'm bad, oh fuck, are they good? And I think a lot of people really get stuck specifically in the early 0 to 3 months. Like when you first meet somebody up until getting to the relationship point, there's a common misconception. A lot of people think that dating is hard. And I'm like, no. Dating's fun. Relationships are where the work starts. That is where you're triggered all the time. Constantly triggered. My partner can shut the door loud and it'll trigger me. My partner said no to me and it triggered me. It reminded me of my fucking dad. Right? And it's like, that's not his problem. But I think people really get stuck on, do I trust myself? Right? Is it my gut? Is it my anxiety? I don't know. Do I play the games? Do I not? And I think really where we're getting stuck is, do I show up authentically or am I so terrified of rejection? And for anybody that is listening in that regard, what I would say is this. If you're so scared that somebody is going to leave you because you're showing up authentically, I'd love to ask you what you're losing. And I'd love to know where you learned that behavior from. Who taught you that you can't be yourself because if you're yourself, you'll lose somebody? And that's okay. There is no shame. My father taught me that. I can openly say that. My siblings taught me that. My mother also showed me a little bit of that. And I think if we can really peel back the layers and bring up in the surface of like, hey, this is really hard for me, or this is really a struggle for me. Can I validate how I feel? Can I even just be kind to myself and show myself a little bit of compassion? And can I work towards working to believe that? Otherwise, we stay stuck in our narratives. We stay stuck in our dysregulation. We stay stuck in a place of not feeling safe because we're expecting other people to create safety for us when that's actually an internal job. And then we get to decide if we allow these people into our lives if they're not adding to the safety.
I'm so glad you brought up the dysregulation piece, because what I have learned in my personal experience and over the course of creating this podcast is that so much of stuckness ties back to the nervous system. So like, first of all, again, quoting the incredible Britt Frank, like freeze, the nervous system's freeze state is the state of stuck. Your nervous system becomes so overwhelmed that you can't move forward and take steps to get yourself unstuck. But on top of that, like thinking about it from a relational perspective, when your nervous system is overwhelmed, you can't do the work that is required to be in relationship with another person. You are triggered. You are out of your zone of tolerance. You're not going to be able to have productive conversations. Conflict is going to escalate. Like it is just the most stuck making thing, nervous system dysregulation. And I think that a huge part of getting unstuck in dating, in relationships, is being able to look at that nervous system piece and be like, how can I get myself and my system to a place where I am feeling safe, where I am feeling calm, and where I can talk about things from the like logical adult part of my brain, not from this triggered kind of like primal inner child wound part.
Well, the fun fact about the brain too, it's like learning between Britt and I have a friend, Nicole Vignola. She's a brilliant scientist as well. When we look at that, it's like, cool. When we get dysregulated, what happens? Ooh, prefrontal cortex shuts off. So the decision-making and common sense goes offline. And then where do we go? Our amygdala stopped growing at 6. That's not fair, but here we are. And so when we go back into that, the past becomes the present. And all of a sudden we start to project onto the other person. We start to, like you said, conflict escalates because we're not looking at this as a teammate. We're looking at this as you're going to leave me, or you're my parent, you're my caregiver, you're the person that inflicted pain, because our brain it's overwhelmed. It can't handle more. So it's trying to protect you. That's why I hate the word self-sabotage, right? Why do I keep sabotaging myself? It's like, well, that word by definition would imply that you're doing this on purpose to hurt yourself. I don't think you're doing this on purpose. Can we look at this as you're trying to protect yourself? If I do this behavior, it's because there's a part of me that is trying to protect maybe being seen, putting myself out there. If I push this person away, see, I can hold on to my core beliefs. It allows me to protect those parts of me that feel inferior, not good enough, unworthy, whatever it is. And when we're dysregulated, we don't get to see things clearly. One of my friends, Minaj, is a meditation guru, and he always used the example of like, if you have a glass of water and you put dirt in it, you're not going to be able to see clearly until you let the dust settle, and then you can see. And that's how I see dysregulation is like, I could look at it. When I get dysregulated, my partner is the enemy. But then when I'm back in a more ventral state and I'm like, oh, that's not dad. And then that's how I don't want to say something I regret. I don't want to act out in a way. I don't want to project onto you. It's so important to even just come back into your body for 5 fucking minutes, go for a walk, do something, call a friend. I don't care if you need to co-regulate, but do something, because I think that to me is one of the biggest issues I see in dating is it's a lot of, no, you're bad and you did this and you did this. I need to defend myself. And it's like, that's a dysregulated state. And then we're trying to intellectualize. We become hypervigilant. We're scanning for safety. The biggest thing that we're missing here is you're no longer connected. You're no longer in connection. Now you're in attachment. And I don't want to attach to anybody because I don't want to be detrimental to my life if I don't have them in it. But I want to connect with you because you're an addition to my life. You're not instead of.
So there are so many different ways to do that, to regulate and get yourself back to a state where you're able to have that conversation and reconnect and not look at your partner as a threat, but as a partner, as a teammate. What are some of your favorites when you're feeling dysregulated? What are some of the tools or strategies that help you get back in your body and back in a place where you can have that conversation?
First thing is I do a lot of sighs. That is your body's natural way of getting the anxiety out. If you hear me sighing around the house, my partner knows. He's like, oh shit, like there's something going on. I go for walks, the bilateral movements of just having one foot. I put in a walking meditation. There's a cool app called Activations. My friend Mimi Bouchard started. And it's just like, I am powerful, right? Like it's activating. It has music. It helps emote like a feelings, or just I'll Google a walking meditation. For me, I just like to be present. I'll use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And by that, I mean 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can smell, 2 things I can, whatever. I forget the senses, but you know my point. Or I'll scan for safety. I'll move my head from left to right really slowly, and I'll call out 3 things in my environment so that I can remind myself that I'm in the present moment and that I'm here, right? I'm not a child and I'm not in this other space. I'll co-regulate. I'll call my mom. I'll call some of my good friends. I'll leave a voice note for them. I'll do something that at least I can use their nervous system to hopefully bring mine back down. Or something that's really simple. I'll tell my partner, I need 10 minutes. And I'll just say, I need some time and I'm going to go for a walk. I need to clear my head. I make the walks very mindful. That's my thing. I used to, when my dog was alive, we were known as like the girl and her dog. People would know us for being like, I see you all the time in New York. You're always with your dog. You're walking everywhere. That was my regulation technique because I was so anxious and living in New York and always on edge. Just get me outside, give me some sunshine on my skin and just feel it on your face and ask, what do you need? Do I need water? Do I need food? Because let's also remember, when we're dysregulated, right? If we were talking primal, that if you and I were sitting here right now having a conversation, we're fine, we're safe. But if somebody with a knife came up, we're not going to be thinking about, did you finish your lunch? Or do you want to go? Or do you want to finish this first? You're just thinking, I need to survive. You're not going to sleep. You're not going to eat. You're not going to take care of yourself. So that's another thing. I'll be like, hey, what do I need right now? I haven't eaten in 8 hours, so I think I should probably eat a little something and come back to the present moment. That is the number one. That's what happens when we get dysregulated. So if I have a lot of sympathetic, if I have a lot of dorsal energy where I just shut down, I'm in freeze or fawn, that might be a cup of tea. That might be me sitting up a little straighter. That might be getting a jacket that makes me feel like a hug. Or, a fun fact, the other night I was dysregulated. I could feel it. I'm very in touch with my body. And I was like, oof, where am I feeling it? I was like, oh, I'm having sensations in my chest. And I remember looking and I was like, what do I need right now? And I was holding my phone. I was like, not this. And I put my phone down and I was like, I want to cuddle with the dog and watch a show. And that's what I did. So just little things. I think a lot of us, I see this often and I'm curious your experience. we see it that people are always looking for something else. But really, why do you think journaling and going for a walk, like that's why these basic things that you don't need a grandiose, I wouldn't say meditate. You don't want to meditate when you're just regulated because it can be really hard to do that. But once you come to a more ventral state, you could punch a pillow. I've done that. I've taken a pillow and beaten it. I've punched the air. Do something to let your body know I fought the tiger off. I'm safe. Now I'm in the present moment.
Mm-hmm. Ugh, I love all of those. I actually have like a physical list of things that I can do when I am dysregulated, and you just gave me some ideas to add to the list. Another big one for me. So it's interesting. I'm not a person that embodies anger super often, but that doesn't mean that I don't have like angry feelings. And sometimes it's crazy, but the best way to help my nervous system kind of like down tempo from that experience, sometimes I just have to scream. Literally, like you said, punch a pillow. I will scream at the top of my lungs into a pillow, and I will feel like a new human being afterwards. It like releases all of that pent up energy that's making me feel tingly and overwhelmed and like I can't focus. Also, dancing. Dancing's
Yes.
another big one for me. I do like a 5-minute dance break. Like I'm just like shaking my body, and like I'm a terrible dancer, mind you. This is not for anyone else. This is just for me. But I find like I put on a either like a intense song or a happy song or like whatever I feel like I need in that moment. And 5 minutes later, after dancing it out, I feel completely different.
I love the dancing. And I do the same thing, like nostalgic music. I'll put a song on that I loved as a kid and I'll put my headphones on and I'm bopping around in the house, just safely moving the energy. I'll never forget, I was doing a session with my friend Masha. And when I got the email about the name change and she saw it, she saw me, I was literally crumbling and she was like, scream. And I screamed like this blood curdling scream that even Ryan, he was downstairs. When I came down, he was like, I knew you were with somebody. I knew you were safe. And he even said, he was like, I've never heard you scream like that. And I was like, the only time I did was when my dog passed away. That was the last time I like, it was this, but it was so cathartic. I needed to get it out because sometimes you can't scream at someone. You can't yell at them. You can't punch them, but doing things to just move your body, yoga, right? Red lighting. I don't care. Something for you. It doesn't mean that we have to spend money. It just means that we have to tap back into our body.
And to your point earlier, I do think that there is this drive or idea that regulating needs to be something big, that we need a certain tool or a machine or to go to this place and do something like grandiose. But really, it's the things that we have at our disposal at all times. It's stopping and it's taking a breath. It's doing some box breathing. It is going for a walk. I feel like a walk is the solution to 97% of life's problems. Whatever is happening, go for a walk, you'll feel better.
It's a processing, that bilateral movement. It helps you just, your brain's like, ooh, what's going on? It's one of my favorites. And also to your point, I think what the big misconception with regulating is one, yeah, that you need it to be this like thing, but two, that when you regulate, that the feelings go away. And it's like, oh, no, 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 no. All regulating does is put me in a position now where I have agency and choice, where now I get to make a decision from a place of more of a, I'm here as an adult, not a little girl that's screaming, waiting for dad to come back home. And I think that's a big misconception that I see. It's like, it doesn't mean that you're just no longer sad or that you're no longer anxious. It just means that your body is no longer treating it as if you're in danger.
You are in a place where you are better able to navigate whatever the emotion is from a place of conscious choice, not from a reactive place.
Exactly. And that's the game changer, I think. And it changed everything for me because I think I always thought, well, why do I still feel this? It's like, because you're a human. And that's part of the braining thing and being a human. And it's not fun, but here we are.
For someone listening who is maybe in the dating world, maybe they're in an early relationship or they're navigating a later part of the relationship and they are feeling really stuck right now, what are like some of the top insights or pieces of advice you would give them to start their journey towards getting unstuck in their relationship, both with their partner and with themselves?
So I'm going to steal a page from Britt, and her micro yeses are huge. Love journaling as well. But like, I think when it comes to feeling stuck in a partnership and a relationship, it's like, okay, that what I really want to understand is like, what choices do I have? And that's why like sometimes I'll do a good old fashioned pros and cons list, but really starting to get curious of like, am I powerless in this decision or do I actually have a choice? And it's okay if we're like, I don't feel like I have a choice. And it's like, well, what's actually in my control? So if I'm married to somebody or I'm in a relationship, right? Like my partner right now, I do have choices. I might not like the choices, but what do I actually have in my control? I can't change him. I can't change that all of a sudden I'll be a millionaire tomorrow. Like, unless you go on OnlyFans and you got a following, tell me how you do it. But other than that, I think what's really important is to start asking yourself, like, one, what are the facts to back up these thoughts that I'm having? Right. And that's why I love journaling. I love to put it down of like, I have no way out. And it's like, okay, is that factual? No, it's not actually factual, right? I do have a way out. It might not be a way I like, but I have friends, I have family, I have a support system, I have a group, I have a sponsor, whatever. And then we have to look as well, is there progress? If I communicate with my partner, right? Like anytime I feel, ugh, are we stuck? I'll communicate that with my partner of like, hey, I don't feel like we're making progress, right? Is there a disconnect between us? Is there something that you and I can do? It's amazing what a conversation could do. And then on top of it, after again, once we come back to the present moment, what are those micro yeses, those little decisions I can make every day to get me to my goal? So if I want to lose 100 pounds, I'm not going to just go tomorrow to the gym and start lifting 50 pounds of weight. It's like, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my sneakers by the door so that I can get myself prepped and primed for a week to know that that's the next step is that I'm going to go for a walk. Okay, maybe I do 2 minutes, then I do 3, then I do 4. We want to safely build so your nervous system can receive and it doesn't feel, because then what happens, right? We go back into the freeze. We go back into, I can't do this, I'm stuck. Maybe something as simple as moving my shoulders and just sitting up a little bit straighter makes me realize, oh, I'm not actually stuck, but my body felt like it was. And just getting curious. Anytime I hear someone say that they feel like they're stuck, especially in their dating life, again, what I would say is, well, what do you actually have control over? And do you genuinely believe that you have control over that? And do you believe that you're deserving and worthy of it? Because that's the other thing. We all think, oh, no, but I want all of these things. Well, let me look at what I'm getting versus what I want. What's the disconnect? Me, right? I'm the disconnect. I have to be the disconnect, because if what I want is this, but this is what I'm receiving, do I have boundaries? Do I communicate? Do I allow shit? Am I insecure? It's okay. But it's really important to get curious.
Well, and that also, speaking of the way that the brain works, so the brain is wired for safety, and it reads safety as familiarity. So you might consciously be thinking, I want a partnership that looks like X, Y, and Z. But if your nervous system is wired to look for A, B, and C, whether that's chaos or conflict or whatever the pattern is, even though you're consciously saying, I want this, your nervous system will calibrate to what's familiar. And you have to do that work and be like, okay, what is actually going on here? Like, what am I actually looking for? What needs to be healed within me for me to step into this kind of relationship that I consciously want?
One of the hardest things for me was to receive my partner. I'll never forget. I was laying on his chest. Like, we were been dating for like 2 months. And I remember just sitting there and I was like, oh, why am I so dysregulated? Like, what is happening? I was like, my body feels really off. And I was like, oh, this is the first time you felt safe with someone. I was like, this is the first time you've been unapologetically yourself. I don't get scared to say something to him. I don't give a fuck. I mean, within reason, of course, I'm not disrespectful, but who I am is who I am. And I think what we have to look to is like, we don't talk about that enough. We talk about the red flags to avoid and the people to avoid. But what we don't talk about enough is how do you prep and prime yourself to receive that? Because my core beliefs are I'm too much. No one's going to love me. I'm not good enough. I'm too much, but not good enough, right? That's that fun double-sided coin. And it's like, but where did I learn that from? I learned that in childhood. Okay, so I don't genuinely believe that about myself. I was taught that. And I think when we can start to understand that, you are in the way of your future. That's the only thing in the way, because I don't think anybody else can control my destiny besides me. Thank God. And so knowing that we have that much control, I think to your point, it's really important to allow our nervous systems to slowly acclimate. That's why we like those little micro yeses. Again, that's why New Year's resolutions don't work. Oh, I'm going to go and do all this. And then 2 days later, your nervous system's like, get on the couch. You don't want to do this. But if we can start really small and build up and start to understand like, hey, what parts of myself do I feel like are unlovable? What do I feel is hard to love about me? Do I actually believe I'm worthy and deserving? Or am I dating people that just mimic my father because it allows me to hold on to my core beliefs?
And let me just say from personal experience, because I have been using this micro yes strategy since I talked to Britt, micro yeses do add up to maximum impact. They do, even if you're talking about the smallest, like you said, sitting up straight and adjusting your shoulders. And then after that, you're like, I'm going to stand up and stretch. And that progression of allowing your brain to safely transition into change and to recognize choices. The second that you're able to do that, you are on your path to getting unstuck. And it might be that you take the step from A to B, or even to like A to A and a half, but eventually those yeses compound and you go from A to Z.
And at the end of the day, too, seek help, right? Like if you can't do it alone, find a therapist, find a coach, find somebody that is not your echo chamber, that is not your friends, that are not the people that always, like I had one of my clients, she messaged me the other day and she was like telling me what she did. And like she was, I'll just say it, she was disrespectful. She was out of line. It was like a guy that had been, don't get me wrong, he was a raging piece of shit, this guy to her. But he reached out to her after a few months and I was like, okay, let's talk about your options. She chose, what is it? She chose violence that day. And it's like, instead of, and of course she gives me the excuse. She's like, well, I had a couple of drinks. And I was like, I don't want to hear this bullshit. Don't give me these excuses that you had a couple of glasses of wine and that's why you told him he had a small dick and you were putting him down. I was like, at the end of the day, your choice was you didn't have to answer. You did not have to give him more power. And she messaged me back and she was like, this is why I'm grateful that I have another voice. She was like, all of my friends backed me up. All of my friends told me like, fuck that guy and da-da-da. And I said, let me ask you, they're all single, aren't they? Who do you want to listen to? Do you want to listen to all the people that are in the same place as you, the same stratosphere, and that's why you're not growing? Versus if you're really feeling stuck and you don't feel safe to talk to someone, even if it's through your insurance, even if it's online, even if it's a fucking support group that is free, find other people to talk to so you have a different echo chamber and a different voice coming into your head, because perspective shifts and holding conflicting truth and holding conflicting thoughts is a huge sign of growth.
And you bring up one of my favorite tools for getting unstuck, which is find someone who has what you want, someone that you trust that has what you want, whether that's the knowledge from how to get from where you are to where you want to go, or someone who has personally gone through that experience and now has whatever it is that you're trying to manifest, whether that's in your relationship, in your personal growth journey, your career, that will be honest with you, because that support, not the yes people, like not the, oh, everything you do is great and you can do no wrong, but the people who will be respectful but honest. That is such an invaluable asset to have on the journey from stuck to unstuck, wherever it is that you're feeling stuck.
I couldn't agree. It's like at the end of the day, we need someone that's going to call you out on your bullshit. You need somebody that's going to give you a different thought process. And if it's just the same thing, it's like my mom always said, like, if you're the smartest person in the room, find another fucking room. Because I don't want it to just be all the same things. I have different people I go to for things because I know I trust my mom, I trust my sister, I trust my partner. But at the end of the day, even if I go to them, right? Like when I'm doing new designs or something, I'll send it out to all the people I trust. I gauge and see, but then I talk to myself. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I come back to, no, Sabrina, this is what you're going to do. Thank you to everybody. I appreciate it. You all didn't like it. We'll see. But I trust myself that no matter what, I'll be okay and I will figure it out.
I love that so much. Sabrina, this conversation has been amazing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work that you're putting out into the world. It is so appreciated. Here at Season of Stuck, as we wrap up our interviews, we have one question that we ask all of our guests. So if it's okay with you, I just have one more question for you.
Lay it on me.
Okay. So imagining your ideal future self, the Sabrina that you are working every day to grow into. If she could travel back in time and talk to the today version of you, what advice do you think she would give you on how to navigate stuckness at this point in your life?
God, I just started tearing up when you said that because I've been having these like visions where there's a bridge by my house and I walk the bridge every morning with the dog and I see her and I always am walking towards her. And every time all she keeps saying is, please believe in yourself. I've been waiting for you. And I'm just like, fuck, she's right. And I'll look and I'll see all my littles behind me and I'm like, I got you. Like we're an army. We're doing this together. And I think that would be I think she's just trying to tell me like, please believe in yourself and please know that you deserve to be here. But I need you to see that because I'm waiting for you to come here. And knowing that that is within our power and our control is a game changer, because if you don't believe in yourself, I don't know how you expect anybody else to.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I absolutely agree. The way that I think about the future self is that there are infinite future selves and they actually exist and they are waiting for me some point in the future to do the work to grow into them. And we can tap into their wisdom and their support and their guidance. And I love that your ideal future self is just telling you, believe in yourself, believe in your path. You're headed this way. That's so beautiful.
Because especially when I think back on the girl that was me 2 years ago who wanted to be here, that's what I would have told her now is like, hey, you got to believe in yourself. There's going to be a lot of people that don't, but that's not the people that you're trying to attain. So like, it's the same with dating. You're trying to be something for everybody. You're trying to get everybody to like you. And it's like, I don't give a fuck if everybody likes you. You can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please them all the time. So just focus on the people that respect and love you for who you are and get rid of the rest.
Future Sabrina is very wise. I'm also going to take that insight and put it in my pocket, carry it with me as well. Sabrina, again, thank you so much for being here. For anyone listening, if they want to connect with you, listen to your podcast, learn more about your work, how can they do that?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for having a fun conversation. It's always nice to just like talk about different stuff. So sabrinazohar.com or the Sabrina Zohar Show on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, and YouTube and all that fun stuff. And Sabrina.Zohar on TikTok and Insta, or the Sabrina Zohar Show on Instagram. So you can connect in a lot of ways, and we'd love to have anybody that wants to join the family.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Thank you.
That's it for today. A huge thank you to our guests for their incredible insights, and a huge thank you to you, our listeners. We know that there are so many podcasts out there to choose from, and we are just so grateful that you chose ours. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider recommending the podcast to a friend or family member that you think would enjoy it. And to make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. And while you're there, if you loved the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review. It plays such a huge part in getting this podcast out to a wider audience and ultimately supporting more people on their journey from stuck to unstuck. And to keep in touch and access even more Stuck-related content, follow us on Instagram at Season of Stuck and visit our website, seasonofstuck.com, where you can sign up to get episodes delivered directly to your inbox. Thank you again for being here. It is so, so appreciated. Until next time, I'm Deanna DeBera, and you're listening to Season of Stuck.